Albania. A country ruled by foreign powers for centuries. Romans, Ottomans, Italian occupiers, followed by 40 years of one of Europe's harshest communist dictatorships under Enver Hoxha. Known for its Adriatic coastline and affordable prices, yet this country has far more to offer. The Albanian Alps in the north, Lake Ohrid in the east, over 700,000 bunkers from the Hoxha era scattered across the entire country, UNESCO World Heritage Sites alongside Ottoman architecture. I'm Thomas, and today I'm taking you on a journey through Albania, a country that Lord Byron himself called the Flower of the East. On the Albanian coast, between the foothills of the Curonian Mountains and the Ionian Sea, Dhërmi sits roughly 200 meters above the water. The village belongs to the Greek minority of southern Albania. Alongside Albanian, a northern Greek dialect is spoken here, one that has endured across generations. The settlement dates back to the Middle Ages. Stone houses with thick walls and arched windows define the old center. Their construction follows the typical style of southern Albanian mountain architecture, also found in Himara and Vuno. Several Orthodox churches stand among the houses, some containing frescoes from the 16th and 17th centuries. The Church of St. Theodore is among the most notable. Below the village stretches a section of coastline that forms part of the so-called Albanian Riviera. The beach of Dhërmi and the neighboring bay of Gjipe are considered two of the few larger sandy beaches along this otherwise predominantly rocky shore. Here, the Curonian Mountains drop steeply, from over 2,000 meters to the sea within just a few kilometers. Between the foothills of the Curonian Mountains and the Ionian Sea lies Gjipe Beach, nestled in a narrow limestone canyon along the Albanian Riviera. Access is either by a steep trail from the coastal road or by water. Both keep visitor numbers low. The canyon cuts deep into the coastal range, opening only at the shoreline itself. Tall walls of pale limestone frame a short stretch of white gravel and sand. The water is shallow, clear, and almost always calm thanks to the sheltered bay. On a clear day, the silhouette of Corfu appears along the western horizon. The entire coast between Logara and Saranda belongs to the Albanian section of the Ionian Sea and is subject to growing conservation interest. Gjipe itself lies within the area designated as Karaburun Sazan Marine National Park in 2010. The park covers roughly 12,400 hectares of sea and coastline, making it Albania's first marine protected area. The footpath from the parking area on the coastal road to the beach is just under 2 kilometers long, descending roughly 200 meters in elevation. Before we continue, these videos require a lot of time, effort, and resources to create. If you would like to support this project, I would truly appreciate your subscription and a like. In the 18th century, Moskopo was one of the largest cities in the Balkans. Over 60,000 people lived here. Merchants, printers, scholars, The city maintained its own printing press and an academy. Today, the village of Voskopoja sits at roughly 1,100 meters above sea level in the Korç district, surrounded by wooded hills. What remains of Moskopol are its churches. The Church of St. Nicholas was built in 1721. Its exonarthex is entirely covered in frescoes. Biblical scenes in vivid colors, remarkably well preserved despite the centuries. A few steps away stands the Church of the Dormition of the Theotokos, erected between 1694 and 1699. Its paintings date from 1712. Both churches are protected as cultural monuments of Albania. The frescoes reflect a distinctive painting school that emerged in Moskopol and the surrounding region. Several painters, among them David Selenica and the Zografi brothers, worked on the church decorations. The city's decline began with repeated raids from 1769 onward. Its population scattered across the Balkans. The stone bell tower of St. Nicholas offers an unobstructed view across the highlands of Korç to the mountain ridges along the Greek border. The Logara Pass crosses the Ceronian Mountains at roughly 1,040 meters, connecting the coastal plain of Vlora with the Albanian Riviera on the Ionian Sea. State Road SH8 winds through the range in tight switchbacks and is regarded as one of the most spectacular mountain passes in the eastern Mediterranean. Around the summit lies Logara National Park, established in 1960. The park protects dense stands of black pine, fir, and beech. One particular pine, permanently bent in a single direction by relentless wind, has become the park's symbol, known as the flag tree. In summer, banks of fog drift up from the valleys and dissolve above the ridgelines. From the viewpoint just below the top of the pass, the land drops sharply toward the Ionian coast. Paragliders use the strong thermals along the cliff edge to descend to the beaches. On its southern side, the road falls through the Ducat Valley toward Dhërmi and Palas, losing over 800 meters of elevation in just a few kilometers. Himara lies on Albania's southern coast, where the Ceronian Mountains drop steeply into the Ionian Sea. The shoreline alternates between broad pebble beaches and narrow coves accessible only by footpath or from the water. The old town sits on a hill above the coast. Its fortress dates back to the 6th century and was built under Byzantine rule. From there, the sea route along the Strait of Corfu was controlled. Over the centuries, the stronghold changed hands between Byzantines, Ottomans, and, briefly, Venetian allies. Within the castle walls stand several Orthodox churches with frescoes from the 16th and 17th centuries. Below the old town, the newer settlement stretches down to the beach. The coastal road connects Himara with Saranda to the south and Vlora to the north. South of town lies the Bay of Filikuri, one of the most remote coves along this stretch of coast. Further inland, the Ceronian Mountains rise above 2,000 meters. The ruins of Borș Castle, a few kilometers to the south, once guarded the same coastline from an elevated position. The Koman Reservoir lies nestled between steep rock faces in the North Albanian Alps. It was created by the construction of a hydropower plant on the Bënja River, which began operation in 1986. The ferry from Koman to Vjosa is the only regular connection through the gorge. The journey takes roughly 2.5 hours. On both sides, limestone flanks rise almost vertically from the water. In places, the lake narrows to just a few dozen meters. Where the Vjosa River flows in, the water turns turquoise. The Vjosa is considered one of the cleanest tributaries in the entire region. At the southern end, a concrete dam seals off the gorge. Beyond it, a road leads through a tunnel cut directly into the rock. Above the shores, a handful of small campsites can be found, reachable only by gravel tracks or by boat. The ferry to Vjosa also serves as the common starting point for onward travel to the Valbona Valley and Theth National Park. Pogradec sits on the southeastern shore of Lake Ohrid, right on the border with North Macedonia. The lake is among the oldest and deepest in Europe. Its water is so clear that visibility of over 20 meters has been recorded. Since 1979, the region has been protected by UNESCO as part of the Ohrid area. On a rocky peninsula near the town lies the village of Lin. There, remains of an early Christian basilica with well-preserved floor mosaics were uncovered, dating to the 5th and 6th centuries. South of Pogradec stretches Drilon National Park, a spring area with dense deciduous forest and natural waterways. The park is home to numerous bird species and serves as one of the region's most important recreational areas. The lakeside promenade of Pogradec connects a modern amphitheater with pedestrian zones and landscaped parks. Next to the theater lies a rose garden that blooms fully in early summer. In the hills above the town stand several Orthodox monasteries. Their interiors preserve religious wall paintings that form part of the regional sacred tradition. The road south from Pogradec leads through the Albanian highlands toward Gjirokastër, crossing several mountain passes above 1,000 meters. Gjirokastër lies in southern Albania, nestled in the valley between the Gjipe Mountains and the Drino River. Above the city stands a fortress, whose oldest structures date back to the 12th century. It ranks among the largest castle complexes in the Balkans. From its walls, one overlooks the entire valley and the surrounding mountains. The cityscape is defined by Ottoman tower houses, known as kulat. These multi-story dwellings, built from gray limestone, are typical of the region. Their facades consist almost entirely of stone, including the heavy roof slabs. The construction served as protection against attacks and helped regulate extreme temperatures. In the Bazaar Quarter, the historic trading center, these stone houses line steep cobblestone streets. The structure of the bazaar has remained largely intact since the 17th century. In 2005, Gjirokastër was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List as a rare example of a well-preserved Ottoman town. Within the fortress lies a tunnel system from the Cold War era, built as a civil defense bunker and now open to the public as a museum. The castle itself served over the centuries as a military outpost, a prison, and an administrative seat. Gjirokastër is one of only 2 places in Albania that hold UNESCO World Heritage status as a historic urban settlement. The other is Berat. On a peninsula in southern Albania, surrounded by a lake and the Vjosa Channel, lies Butrint. The ancient settlement began as a Greek colony and evolved over the centuries into a hub of shifting powers. Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Venetians, each era left its own architectural layer within a compact space. The theater dates to the 3rd century BC and seated several thousand spectators. Built into the hillside, it later served for gladiatorial combat under Roman rule. Above the theater lie the remains of an Asclepios sanctuary, one of the oldest structures on the site. The Great Basilica was built during the early Christian period and reflects the shift from a pagan to a Christian urban layout. Nearby stands the baptistry, whose mosaic floor with geometric and figural motifs ranks among the most significant in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Triconch Palace, a late antique ceremonial building, was remodeled several times and ultimately used as a Venetian fortress. The triangular castle on the lakeshore dates to the 15th century and controlled access by water. Ali Pasha of Ioannina also had a small fortification built along the channel in the 18th century. Butrint has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1992. The complex encompasses layers from over 2,000 years of habitation within less than 1 square kilometer. On the coast of southern Albania, facing the Greek island of Corfu, Ksamil sits along the Ionian Sea. The town falls within the Butrint National Park, whose archaeological site has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1992. Ali Pasha Tepelena had a fortress built at the Strait of Butrint in the late 18th century. The structure guarded access to the lagoon and controlled the sea route along the coast. Its walls remain largely intact above the water to this day. Off the coast lie 4 small islands, reachable across shallow, clear water. The seabed here consists mainly of light sand, which gives the water its color. The islands are uninhabited and without permanent structures. Ksamil itself has around 3,000 residents and lies roughly 14 kilometers south of Saranda, the nearest larger coastal town. Berat lies on the banks of the Osum, nestled between mountain ranges in southern Albania. The city is known as the City of 1,000 Windows, a name derived from the densely layered Ottoman houses lining the hillsides. Their white facades, with large, symmetrically placed windows, still define the cityscape today. On the opposite bank lies the Gorica quarter, connected by a stone arch bridge. Together, both sides form a cohesive ensemble of Ottoman residential architecture, rarely preserved at this density. On the hill above the city stands the fortress of Berat. Its origins trace back to the Illyrian period, but the present structure was largely expanded in the 13th century under the despotate of Epirus. Within the castle walls stand several Byzantine churches, including the Church of the Holy Trinity and the Cathedral of St. Demetrius. The Church of St. Mary houses an iconostasis attributed to the Albanian painter Onufri, one of the most significant icon painters of the 16th century in the Balkans. Alongside the Christian structures, Ottoman sacred buildings stand both within and below the fortress. The King's Mosque in the city center dates from the 15th century. On the castle grounds lie the remains of the Red Mosque, of which mainly the minaret survives today. This coexistence of different sacred buildings in close proximity is characteristic of Berat's urban history. Since 2008, Berat has been part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, together with Gjirokastër, under the title Historic Centers of Berat and Gjirokastër. The fortress is accessible year-round, and entry to the castle area is free. In northern Albania, nestled among the peaks of the Albanian Alps, lies the Valbona Valley. The surrounding mountain range is called Prokletije, known in English as the Accursed Mountains. The valley stretches along the Valbona River, whose sources spring from the high mountains near the Montenegrin border. The water is remarkably clear, with a turquoise shimmer, a result of the limestone rock it flows through. Small settlements like Dragobi line the riverbanks, still accessible only by a single road. Houses stand close to the water, often surrounded by pasture land and deciduous forest that turns copper red in autumn. The region's best-known hiking route crosses the Valbona Pass to Theth. It reaches an elevation of roughly 1,700 meters and is considered one of the most popular long-distance hikes in the Western Balkans. Since 2014, a ferry service across Lake Koman connects the valley to the road network further south. The Valbona Valley has been designated a national park since 1996, covering an area of approximately 80,000 hectares. In northern Albania, nestled among the peaks of the Albanian Alps, lies the valley of Theth. The surrounding mountains are also known as the Accursed Mountains, a name rooted in ancient local traditions. The national park was established in 1963 and covers roughly 2,600 hectares. The village of Theth consists of scattered homesteads and stone houses. At its center stands a small Catholic church with a shingle-roofed bell tower. It is one of the few Catholic places of worship preserved in this remote mountain region. Inside, the furnishings are modest, wooden pews and a simple altar. Nearby stands a kula, a traditional stone defense tower. Such towers once served to protect families under the kanun, Albanian customary law. The river Lumi I Thethit runs through the valley. Its water level varies greatly with the seasons, swelling with autumn rains, yet nearly running dry in September. At the upper end of the valley, the Grunas waterfall plunges roughly 30 meters. Further downstream lies the Blue Eye of Theth, a spring pool of remarkably clear water, fed by underground sources. The only access road is a single-lane mountain track, frequently impassable in winter. On a rocky ridge above the Bay of Borsh sits Keparo, one of the oldest villages on the Albanian coast. The settlement is divided into two parts: the historic mountain village and the newer coastal hamlet on the Ionian Sea. Between them lie slopes covered with olive groves and low scrubland, typical of the Mediterranean vegetation in southern Albania. Old Keparo is defined by stone houses and defensive towers, once built for protection against raids. Many of these structures now lie in ruin, roofs collapsed, walls exposed. During the communist era, much of the population was relocated, and the mountain village lost its inhabitants. What remains is a settlement pattern still clearly legible. Narrow paths, massive foundations, tower-like buildings of roughly hewn limestone. Below the old village center stretches one of the quieter bays along the Albanian Riviera. The water is clear, access limited by a steep road. Keparo belongs to the municipality of Himara, designated since 2019 as part of the extended coastal protection zone along the southern Albanian Riviera. The entire stretch between the Logara Pass and Saranda covers around 70 kilometers of coastline. The Vjosa flows roughly 270 kilometers through southern Albania, from the Greek border to the Adriatic. Along its entire course, there is not a single dam, making it one of Europe's last free-flowing rivers. In March 2023, Albania declared the entire catchment area a national park. It was the first Wild River National Park on the European continent. The protected status covers the main channel and its tributaries, spanning over 13,000 hectares. Between steep rock faces, the riverbed constantly shifts its shape. Wide gravel banks give way to narrow gorges, and turquoise water carves through limestone. This mosaic of habitats is home to over 1,000 animal and plant species, including rare fish such as the soft-mouthed trout. Near Permet, old stone bridges span the river, some dating back to Ottoman times. Here, the Vjosa shows its calmest side, before gaining gradient again further south. The entire national park is freely accessible, with no entrance fee. The Osumi Canyon lies in southern Albania, in the Skrapa region, nestled between steep rock faces and wooded hills. The Osum River has carved deep into the limestone here, forming a gorge that in places exceeds 200 meters in depth. The canyon stretches through the landscape for roughly 13 kilometers. The cliff walls drop almost vertically. At their base, the river winds in tight bends along the gorge floor. Depending on the light, the water appears anywhere from turquoise to gray-green. Dense vegetation lines the upper edges of the cliffs, marking a sharp boundary between rock and greenery. A bridge spans the canyon at considerable height, connecting the two sides for road traffic. The road along the canyon leads to Çorbovode, the nearest small town. The Osumi Canyon ranks among Albania's most significant geological formations. It is protected by the state as a natural monument. In summer, when water levels drop, parts of the gorge become accessible on foot. Përmet lies in southern Albania, nestled in a valley carved by the Vjosa River. The small town belongs to the Gjirokastër district and is flanked by mountain ranges on both sides. At the edge of town rises Guri I Qytetit, a striking rock formation regarded as a natural landmark. Upstream, the Lengarica flows into the Vjosa. An Ottoman stone bridge spans the Lengarica Gorge, marking the way to thermal springs along the riverbank. Warm water emerges directly from the rock and blends with the cool river. The bridge itself is an arched structure of roughly hewn stone, typical of Ottoman infrastructure in southern Albania. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Përmet was a center of Albanian culture and education. In 1942, the first anti-fascist Congress of Albania was held here. Outside town, the Church of the Holy Mary stands on a hilltop, surrounded by forest and overlooking the entire valley. The Vjosa, flowing through Përmet, is considered one of Europe's last great wild rivers without a dam. In southern Albania, between the mountain ranges of the Kërvelesh Massif, the Nivica Canyon cuts deep into limestone. The gorge remains one of the country's least accessible landscapes. Along the cliff faces, the waterfall Ujavara Esotiris plunges into a natural pool. Its water originates from karst springs above the village of Progonat. The runoff follows the gradient of the gorge, feeding further cascades. A few hundred meters away lies Ujavara e Pashtures, set within a narrower karst formation. Both falls are reachable only by unpaved trails. The rock throughout the gorge is riddled with cavities and subterranean channels, typical of karst terrain. On the surface, this appears as steep, smooth-worn cliff faces with sharp edges. Vegetation clings mainly to the margins, where enough sediment collects for roots to take hold. In the abandoned buildings of surrounding settlements, goat herds have found shelter. The region is sparsely populated, the nearest paved road several kilometers away. At the edge of the Lengarica Gorge, where the river meets the Vjosa, several thermal springs emerge openly from the rock. The pools sit right along the riverbank, just meters apart. Their water contains sulfur and reaches temperatures between 30 and 40 degrees. Directly beside the springs, an Ottoman stone bridge spans the Lengarica River. The Kadiut Bridge dates back to the 18th century and is among the best preserved arched bridges in southern Albania. Its single arch blends into the rocky landscape as though it were part of the stone itself. The bridge once served as a link between the valley villages and the plateaus above. Upstream, the Lengarica Gorge begins. In places, its walls stand only a few meters apart. The water has cut deep into the limestone, leaving smooth, towering rock faces behind. The turquoise color comes from the high mineral content and the shallow depth over a pale riverbed. The thermal springs of Bënja lie within the catchment of the Vjosa, Europe's last great wild river without a dam. Since 2023, the Vjosa has been protected as a national park. The peninsula of Lyn extends as a narrow rocky ridge into Lake Ohrid, roughly 20 kilometers south of Pogradec on Albania's eastern shore. The village itself has only a few hundred inhabitants. Houses stand close together, most topped with terracotta tile roofs. Narrow paths lead from the waterline up to the tip of the peninsula, where the remains of an early Christian basilica hold some of Albania's most significant floor mosaics. They date from the 5th or 6th century and depict animal and plant motifs in geometric patterns. The basilica was uncovered during archaeological excavations in the 1960s. Scattered across the peninsula are small concrete bunkers, part of the hundreds of thousands of military shelters built across the country under the regime of Enver Hoxha. Along the shore, gardens and wooden jetties reach directly to the water's edge. The lake itself is among the oldest and deepest in Europe. The Lake Ohrid region was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1979, initially on the North Macedonian side. Albania's extension was granted in 2019. Lake Ohrid reaches a maximum depth of 288 meters and is home to over 200 endemic species. On the coast of southern Albania, where a small peninsula juts into the Ionian Sea, stands the fortress of Porto Palermo. Its layout is triangular, with massive walls and round corner towers. This shape is unusual for the region and traces back to an older Venetian fortification whose remains served as the foundation. Ali Pasha of Tepelena had the present fortress built at the beginning of the 19th century. As a semi-autonomous ruler within the Ottoman Empire, he controlled large parts of the southern Balkans. Porto Palermo served as a fortified outpost to secure the coastline and sea routes along the Albanian Riviera. The bay itself offered natural shelter for ships, further increasing the site's strategic value. After Ottoman rule ended, the Albanian military continued using the site throughout the 20th century. During the Cold War, the Bay of Porto Palermo was developed into a submarine base. Today, the fortress is open to the public. Its walls are largely intact, the casemates accessible. From the ramparts, one overlooks the entire bay, across to the coastline near Himare. The fortress is protected as an Albanian cultural monument and lies roughly 15 kilometers south of Himare along the coastal road. Tirana sits on a plain between the Gjipe Massif to the east and the coastal lowlands to the west. For centuries, the Albanian capital was a small Ottoman settlement, until it was declared the seat of government in 1920. Since then, the cityscape has changed profoundly, layer upon layer, era after era. At its center lies Skanderbeg Square, named after the national hero George Kastrioti. The Etembe Mosque on its eastern side dates from the 18th century and is one of the few buildings the communist regime did not demolish. Right beside it, the National History Museum displays a large-scale facade mosaic depicting Albania's history from antiquity to independence. A short walk away stands the Pyramid of Tirana. Originally built in 1988 as the Enver Hoxha Museum, and since converted into an open cultural and technology center. Concrete bunkers remain visible across the city center, remnants of a nationwide program that produced around 170,000 such structures under the dictatorship. The largest accessible bunker, Bunk Art, sits on the outskirts and now serves as a museum of the communist past. Just steps from the square lies the New Bazaar, a market quarter restored after its historic model. Mount Daiti, east of the city, reaches 1,613 meters and is accessible by cable car directly from the urban area. Cape Rodan juts into the Adriatic as a narrow, rocky peninsula, roughly 30 kilometers north of Durrës. The headland separates two shallow bays and is accessible by a single road. At its most exposed point, Gjergj Kastrioti, known as Skanderbeg, had a fortress built in the 15th century. The stronghold was designed to control the sea route along the Albanian coast and serve as a refuge against Ottoman attacks. Today, sections of the outer walls, isolated tower fragments, and a gateway of brick and natural stone still stand. Within the fortress grounds lies the small church of St. Anthony. The single-nave structure with whitewashed walls dates from the 16th century. Inside, frescoes depict scenes from the life of St. Anthony. The church remains an active pilgrimage site for the region's Catholic community. Scattered across the Cape are concrete bunkers from the communist era. Under Enver Hoxha, the regime built over 100,000 such shelters nationwide. The examples at Cape Rodan are compact, with narrow entrances and massive concrete walls. They served as coastal defenses and are freely accessible today. Hills covered in dense maquis enclose the peninsula on its landward side, while the coastline alternates between rocky cliffs and shallow sandy coves. The entire Rodan Fortress complex is a protected monument and has been gradually stabilized since the 2000s. Kruge lies on the western flank of a limestone massif, roughly 30 kilometers northeast of Tirana, where the highlands drop steeply toward the coastal plain. On a rocky ridge above the town stands the fortress that became the center of Albanian resistance against the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century. Gjergj Kastrioti, known as Skanderbeg, defended the castle multiple times between 1442 and 1468 against Ottoman siege armies. His resistance turned Kruge into a symbol of Albanian independence. Within the castle walls, the Skanderbeg Museum opened in 1962, designed by architect Pranvera Hoxha. The building combines concrete and natural stone into a structure that blends into the fortress complex. At the foot of the castle stretches the Old Bazaar, a covered market street whose timber buildings trace back to Ottoman trade architecture. Above the town, a road climbs through steep limestone flanks to the ridge of Sarisaltik, a pilgrimage site overlooking the entire valley. In the opposite direction lies the Bovila Reservoir Gorge, a narrow cut between rugged rock walls that supplies Tirana with drinking water. The Fortress of Kruže is a protected cultural monument and one of the most visited historic sites in Albania. Around 20 kilometers north of Tirana lies the Bovila Reservoir, nestled among the mountain ranges of Dajti National Park. It was created in the 1990s to supply the Albanian capital with drinking water. To this day, it covers a large share of Tirana's demand. The dam holds water in an elongated valley stretching northward between steep limestone flanks. The turquoise color results from the mineral content of the rock and the low sediment load. Depending on the season and water level, the hue changes noticeably. In spring, when meltwater feeds the tributaries, the level rises considerably. In midsummer, it recedes, exposing pale rock edges along the shoreline. Because the reservoir supplies drinking water, strict protection rules apply. Swimming and boating are prohibited. The surrounding slopes have remained largely undeveloped. Hiking trails lead from the southern side of the dam along the shoreline and up to viewpoints on the adjacent ridges. From there, the view extends across the full length of the lake to the mountains in the north. The dam itself stands around 90 meters tall, making it one of the largest infrastructure structures in Albania. South of Vlora, between the Narta Lagoon and the Adriatic coast, lies one of Albania's largest salt production areas. Shallow pans stretch out in strict geometric patterns, filled with seawater at various stages of evaporation. The color of each field depends on salt concentration and microorganisms. Low concentrations appear greenish or blue, while higher levels produce shades of red and orange. This is mainly caused by halophilic algae and archaea that thrive in highly saline water. The result is a grid of color fields that shifts with every phase of evaporation. The Vlora saltworks rely on a simple principle. Adriatic seawater is channeled into shallow basins where sun and wind drive evaporation. Through several stages, the concentration rises until salt crystallizes. Machines push the harvest into mounds for further processing. The entire cycle follows the rhythm of the summer months, when heat and low rainfall favor evaporation. The Narta Lagoon, on whose edge the saltworks sit, is also a habitat for flamingos, pelicans, and numerous other water birds. Rozafa, the fortress above Shkodër, stands on a hill at the confluence of the Bënja and Drin rivers. where the highlands meet the plain of Lake Shkodër. It ranks among the oldest fortified sites in the Balkans. Its walls were built by Illyrians, then taken over and reshaped by Romans, Byzantines, Venetians, and Ottomans. Each rule left distinct layers in the stonework. Within the fortress walls stand the ruins of a medieval cathedral, whose arches and stone remnants still reveal the original layout of the space. Shkodër itself is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Albania. Mosques and churches stand in close proximity throughout the town. The lead mosque, also known as the Bushatli Mehmet Pasha Mosque, dates from the Ottoman period and takes its name from the lead covering of its dome. A few streets away stands the Catholic Cathedral of St. Stephen, its interior fitted with wooden pews and round windows of colored glass. This concentration of different faiths within a small area defines the character of the city to this day. Outside the center, the messy bridge spans the river Kir. This Ottoman stone bridge with its multiple arches once formed part of a trade route linking Shkodër to the hinterland. South of the city stretches Lake Shkodër, the largest lake on the Balkan Peninsula, shared between Albania and Montenegro. Roughly 2/3 of its surface lies on the Albanian side. Zvornik lies in the Narta Lagoon on the southern Albanian coast, a few kilometers northwest of Vlora. The small island is connected to the mainland by a wooden walkway. Dense vegetation covers nearly the entire island. Rising above the treetops is the roof of the Monastery of St. Mary, the only structure on the island. The monastery church dates from the 13th century and belongs to the Byzantine building tradition of southern Albania. Its floor plan is compact, and the outer walls are built from rough, natural stone. Inside, remnants of wall paintings have survived, pointing to the late Byzantine period. For centuries, the monastery served as a spiritual center for the surrounding coastal communities. Under the communist rule of Enver Hoxha, it was closed like nearly all religious sites in Albania and fell into decay. The Narta Lagoon itself is a shallow, brackish waterway, separated from the Adriatic by a narrow strip of land. Salt pans along the northern edge have been in use since antiquity. The waters provide habitat for mallards, flamingos, and numerous migratory bird species that rest here along the Adriatic flyway. The entire lagoon, including Zvornik, is designated a protected area and forms part of the Narta wetland, classified as internationally significant under the Ramsar Convention. In the 6th century BC, settlers from Corinth founded a colony on a hill above the Vjosa Valley and named it after the god Apollo. Apollonia grew into one of the most important trading posts along the Illyrian coast. The Bouleuterion, the assembly hall of the city council, sits at the center of the site. Nearby stands the Agonothetes monument, an honorary structure dedicated to the organizer of public games. Street layouts, temple remnants, and the agora reveal a carefully planned ancient city. An Odeon for musical performances complemented public life. Among the ruins stands the Monastery of St. Mary, a Byzantine-era structure built in the 13th century. The monastery church preserves a fully intact iconostasis. Since 1999, Apollonia has been on Albania's tentative list for UNESCO World Heritage status. The entire site lies roughly 12 kilometers west of the city of Fier, on a plateau rising about 100 meters above the surrounding plain. In the heart of Durrës, right on Albania's Adriatic coast, lies one of the largest amphitheaters in the Balkans. Built in the 2nd century under Emperor Trajan, the complex could seat up to 20,000 spectators. Durrës, then known as Dyrrachium, was a major hub on the Via Egnatia, the principal route linking Rome to the eastern Mediterranean. The elliptical arena covers roughly 130 by 100 meters. Beneath the stands, corridors and access tunnels remain walkable to this day. One of the galleries contains a small chapel with wall mosaics dating to the 6th or 7th century, evidence of the building's later use as a Christian site. After antiquity, the amphitheater fell into oblivion. It was only rediscovered in 1966 during construction work. Since then, only parts of the original structure have been excavated. Residential buildings still stand on sections of the ancient walls. Since 2003, the amphitheater has been on Albania's tentative list for UNESCO World Heritage status. The Via Egnatia, which began at Dyrrachium's western starting point, stretched roughly 1,000 kilometers all the way to Byzantium.